so be careful what you say. So my name is Anthony Rusomano. I'm the College and Career Counseling Coordinator for Capistrano Unified School District, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about your PSAT scores. I've been tutoring SAT and ACT, all those tests for about over 20 years, so I really want to give you some insight into how to interpret your scores and what you can do from here and this point on. So with that said, again, welcome, and I'd like to thank the Pat Soccer Club for allowing us this opportunity to use their platform of Zoom, and welcome all the CUSD students as well. So again, thank you for attending, and I'm going to do a couple things. One is share my screen because I want to show you some slides, as well as we'll do some online tour of the College Board website and how to access your score. So we're going to do a bunch of things today. But before we do that, we're going to do a little housekeeping. And let me get my slide up here. Here we go. A wonderful slideshow. Okay, so my email is on the board if you could see it right now. So again, my name is Anthony Rusomano. I'm not John. That's just the name for this Zoom platform. My email's there, ajrusomano@capousd.org. If you have some follow-up questions after our event tonight or even during, you might want to reach out to me and shoot me an email. Feel free to do that. So I'll leave it up for a second. So as far as some housekeeping issues going, let's kind of walk through that. The way we use this Zoom platform, there's a couple things you can do with this Zoom platform. So I want to just show you and talk to you about that. One is you'll see that you're able to ask some questions in chat. I have the talking function stopped so we don't have to get a lot of feedback in there. But up here, you'll see some audio settings, okay, that allows you to adjust your volume and your control. There's a chat feature, and that chat feature there's also a Q&A. That allows you just to ask some questions of me while I'm going through the presentation. I may or may not answer them at that moment, or we'll save them at the end. So feel free to do that. Please don't use your raise your hand. I'd rather you chat something in there. It'd be a lot easier just so I can manage this process of that. So again, it's really some simple features you can use on this platform and allow us kind of get a nice flow to the presentation tonight. So again, if you have some questions, preferably in the chat, I'm going to see that. So I'll be able to answer that at that moment. So again, that's kind of how we can walk through the presentation tonight in terms of that. So I'm going to do a first initial poll. The other thing we could do is poll. So I'm going to kind of release a poll for you guys right now and ask you just kind of a quick question if you're happy with your PSAT score. So if you wouldn't mind voting, if you even know what the score means or not. You might not know, and that's what part of tonight is going to be. And some of you might have already looked up your score and seen if you're happy. Great. So a lot of people don't know. I always love to see yeses. But it's pretty typical. Most students, they're really not that necessarily happy with them, or they really don't know. And that's what tonight is about. Most people have voted already. And okay, great. We almost got everybody there. So the majority just really don't know. And that's okay. I'm going to end the poll now. So again, most people just don't know. That's okay, as I said. So let's kind of talk about it. First of all, there is a congratulations on your part, okay? And I really think that's bigger than you might think it is. And I know in the Capo district, they made all the sophomores and juniors take the test. And I think that's fantastic because it's a really great step to get started reaching your college goals. It's just getting familiar with what the exam looks like. It's just a practice exam, okay? It doesn't have any bearing on admissions, so there should be no pressure associated with it looking at your scores tonight, okay? But you got to take a test under real conditions. That's always helpful. You'll be able to get some free personalized practice, and we'll talk about that later. And we'll talk about national merit as well later. But again, for the biggest thing, more than anything else, it's about the practice that you get. So if you're not happy with your scores or you don't know and then you become unhappy, just remember it's not an intelligence test. It doesn't take away who you are personally. It's just how well you did on this exam, okay? Again, this doesn't replace how well you're doing in school with your GPA. And even if you do well in school with your GPA, doesn't mean you automatically do well in this test. So we'll talk about some of those nuances as well. But it is a very coachable test, I know, because I've taught it for so many years. But again, this great practice for you. So let's look at it in that way, in that perspective. Okay. So with that said, let's kind of get into viewing your scores and how do I find my score reports. Two things would happen. You either got a printed score report from your school, and that's what I'll walk through first, and then I'll show you how to look at your score report online. So we're going to do two things tonight. Okay. So again, the first part is looking at your paper report. So if you have a printed paper report, please pull it out, take it out, because we're going to walk through that first. A lot of the scores and a lot of the information is on the online as well, so you'll be able to follow along even if you're looking online or if you're not even looking at a score. Okay. So I'll give you a second to pull those out, and then we'll really get into it. Okay. All right. So here's what it looks like. You're going to have your printed report. It's going to have information on the front. You'll notice here I have a little red star here, and I'll point to a few things. You're going to get the ability to go online, as we'll talk about in a bit, and this is where you kind of go to do that. And you also have an access code. Okay, and then that access code will allow you to get more details about your report, and we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so that's the first part. Okay, so you've got it. And here's where, the drum roll, please. Here's where we look at our scores. Okay, so if you look in the middle, that's where you're going to see your total score. Okay. And by the way, because I'm going through the presentation, I might not see some of the chat questions. So every now and then, I'm going to go back and forth to that. So you got to be patient with me to make sure that I have that for you. Okay. All right, so 860 is in the middle. So this student has a total score of 860. Now you'll see it on there. It says that the score ranges from 320 to 1520. Okay, so the maximum score is 1520. All right. On the left side and the right side are going to be your evidence-based reading and writing score and your math score. Now online, you'll have these three scores as well, but kind of formatted a little differently. So just understand that, okay? So again, that's the scale. So take that in. Again, some of you who don't know, this is where we start to kind of put it in perspective for you. Okay. All right, I'm going to go back and just check. I want to make sure that we didn't get any questions here. So perfect, nothing there. So I'm going to share my screen again. So you're taking a moment, you're taking your scores in, you're going, how well did I do? All right, great, nothing. I'm going to go back to my desktop, and here we go with our scores here. All right, so again, in the middle is your total score. You're going to see a couple things in there. You're going to get a percentile. On your printed report, you're going to get extra percentiles online. I'll show you that later. So this person, where it says the 28th, scored in the 28th percentile. Okay, and we'll talk about percentiles in a second. So again, the scores range from 320 to 1520 in the middle. On the left and the right, individual scores go up to 760. Now, some of you are going to say, well, isn't the SAT scored out of 1600? And aren't the subject scores or the side scores out of 800? You're correct in that. But again, if we look in the middle here, they're telling you, regardless of that, even though they're on the same scale, they're saying it's on the same scale, even though the point numbers are a little different. They're telling you if you were to go in next week and take the SAT, you'll score an 860. So basically, they're saying they're equivalent in that sense. So again, whatever your total score is, that's what you would score on an SAT according to them, give or take a few points here and there. Okay, so again, that's your total score. And what we're going to look at now is some of the stuff below, okay? So again, the sub-scores here, you're going to see these graphs, a red graph, a green graph, okay, some of these items here. And that's going to give you what we call our benchmarks. So I'm going to move ahead here, and you'll see these benchmarks. If your score is in the red, that means you need to strengthen your skills. If it's in the green, you're meet or exceed it, and if you're in the yellow, you're approaching the benchmark, okay? So again, the red need to strengthen, so they're saying you're below the grade level benchmark. Now, if you see a green check mark, and online you'll see this, it's the same thing, you're on track for college readiness according to them, okay? I'm gonna go back here to the score. So again, these are benchmark scores. And again, I wouldn't pay too much attention to these, except the number scores themselves. Again, the most important thing is what you're going to do with this score when you get ready for your exam. Now, if you do nothing, that's what basically you're going to score, and you're not going to see an improvement. So if you weren't happy with it, don't just go and take the test. If you are happy with your score, then go in and take the test. If you don't know and you're not sure, I think a lot of it's going to have to do with where you maybe want to go to school, and we'll talk about how we kind of match that up, okay? So again, so this is the major scores. When colleges are looking at scores, these are the threes that they're mainly looking at. We'll talk a little bit about the sub scores and the cross scores and all that other information in there as well, okay? All right, moving on. So here's the other scores that you're going to see on the test. Now, when we talk about other scores, there's the main test scores, which are those three subject areas that we saw in the two breakdowns of the scores with the total score. They now break it down into this range of 8 to 38. So they're going to give you a reading score. They're going to break the three subjects up now. You're going to get a math score and a writing and language score, and it goes out of 38. Again, those are the main hub of scores that you want to see. The cross-test scores, where they talk about social studies, science, history, and then these sub-scores are breaking down to different specific question types. Again, it's going to just give you an idea of where your strengths and maybe your weaknesses are. If you're in the green in some of these, again, you're meet or exceed the benchmark. So these color, our coordinators are for the benchmarks, okay? If you're in the red, then you're below the benchmark. So in this case, this student did best in algebra because they were the closest in the green, okay? All right, so again, with this, all these scores, the most important ones are going to be back here, these three scores. And I wouldn't get too much into your sub-scores unless you see a lot of trends in one particular area that you really weaken, okay? So again, these sub-scores and test scores, there's just a lot of information over there, okay? I wouldn't get too caught up in that. You know, people get, oh my God, there's so many scores. It really gets confusing. But most schools, again, are looking at your total score and the two side scores of the test scores of evidence-based reading and writing and your math, okay? And I'm going to show you this online as well, so I'm not going to go as detailed right now. So let's move on from that, okay? All right. I'm going to skip that. In terms of, to put things in perspective, I want to give you an overall. The national mean, so the average, is a little bit over 1,000. Okay, so if you're at 900, you're a little bit below the average. If you're at 1,100, you're above the average. Here's the means and the averages in the specific section areas, the cross-test scores and the test scores. Again, I wouldn't focus too much on it. If you're below average, doesn't mean you have to be there when you take your SAT. If you're above average, doesn't mean you're going to be there when you actually take your SAT. If you do nothing, you might score a little bit lower. So these are just the means to put it in perspective, okay? Again, I'm going to go back now and just kind of see if there's any questions. Okay, nothing here. Perfect. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to go back. All right, so moving on. So now we've looked at some averages. We're putting it in perspective. Now where do we want to go with this? All right, and this is where a lot of people have questions. If you're a sophomore on this call tonight, this doesn't affect you in any way. If you're a junior, for the most part, it doesn't affect you anyway, because for national merit scholarships, and a lot of people get really anxious around that topic in itself, most students don't achieve that, unfortunately. Okay, so if you're a junior, you're eligible. If you're a sophomore, you're not, and you'll see this little asterisk by it. But here's your National Merit Scholarship Corporation score. They have a selection index. Okay, and the way the selection index works, okay, is basically they take all your test scores, okay, you're up to 38, and then they add them all together and they multiply it by 2, okay? So in terms of eligibility, everybody that's a junior is eligible. A lot of people go, oh, is my kid going to get a National Merit Scholarship to be a finalist and everything? It's few and far between, okay? Over 1.6 million people are taking these exams, okay? And it's very, very small that you get this scholarship. So for most students, it doesn't even apply. So I don't even let them worry about it. So don't worry about it if you're not in the range. I just want to give you a quick quick history lesson about this program. Okay, again, it's for juniors. They take the top percent, okay, it's actually more than 1.5 million that take the exam. Some people get commended, some people become semifinalists. Well, the semifinalists, there's only 16,000 semifinalists and about 15,000 finalists. So again, the number of students that actually get this award are few and far between. So don't put a lot of stock into it if you don't get it. In California, the number's around 221. So if you're not even close, you're not even in the 200 range, you're not going to get it. You're not going to be in there. Now, if you're in the 220 range, you have an opportunity to become a semifinalist. Last year in Capistrano Unified School District, we had about 14 semifinalists. Okay, they're still working on who's going to become the finalists, and there's about 8,000 of those that get that. Okay, and then only half of those get awarded the scholarships. So again, most students don't get the scholarships, and I wouldn't put my wouldn't bank on it that you're going to get the scholarship, because most students don't. So that's national merit. Again, I briefly mention it just because a lot of people have heard about it, but for most students, again, they don't get it. So if you're not in that 220 range, especially in California, because they do it state by state, you're not going to get that award, and that's okay. Again, the PSAT has no relevance to college admissions. Okay, it doesn't help you get into college. Okay, your test score, your SAT, is a different story. Okay. Again, online, I'll show you where to look and find your National Merit Scholarship Index, okay? But on the paper report, that's where it's located. So here we have some next steps, and this is telling you, again, this will be online as well, what you do well and what you need to improve. So that's what the skills insight part of it, okay? So to the left over here, it's telling you what you're likely able to do based on how you scored. So it might say, hey, well, you do well of using the context, and or you need to improve upon revising text because you get some of those questions wrong. So on the left side is what you can do. On the right side is are your weaknesses or what things you can improve. So they give you some insight into that. Not so helpful, because a lot of times you're reading and go, what did they really mean? What does draw reasonable inferences mean? I don't know what that means. So not as helpful, especially when you're just reading it with no context. But I'll show you where the important part is and how you can kind of relate that information. So again, this is the skill insight area, the paper form. I'll show it to you online in a moment, okay? So as we move on, this is really where the bread and butter is, okay? This is where the good stuff is, and online there's even better stuff. But this is actually telling you section by section how you did on every particular question. So for example, in the reading section, here are all the numbered questions. Here's what are the correct answers. So you actually have all the answers right in front of you. This is what you put. So again, the key over here is check mark, you got it right. A red O slash through is omitted. This also tells you if it's an easy, medium, or hard question. So you're able to find out what you're getting right or wrong. And then in the sub-scores, this tells you, and that's how they get all those categories of scores for your sub-scores and your cross scores, okay? So again, I'm briefly going to go over it because I want to show you the online report because it's so much better, okay? So this is where it all is. So I want to make sure you look at it, and we're going to use it to our advantage. And that's how you do is you go to studentscores.collegeboard.org and use this access code, and you'll be able to see the answers and the questions, and I'll show that to you in a moment, okay? All right, so that's your paper report in a nutshell. I'm going to switch over to the online report and show you all the really cool tools associated with that and to get in a little bit more in depth, okay? So, but before I do that, just want to pause a moment, see if you guys have any questions. And let's see, so I'll give a moment. If you have a question, please go into the chat area, ask a question about the printed report. I maybe I'll answer it now or wait till a little bit later. And if not, I'm going to move over to the online portion. So give it you a second, take a little sip of water. And you get to hear me swallow because I've got my microphone right there. All right. Okay, no questions. Fantastic. That means I'm confusing people, or they're understanding it. Or you're really upset and you've got your face in a pillow because you didn't do so well now that you kind of understand it. But again, I'm going to paint a little bit more perspective in a moment and what you should do with these scores. All right, I got a couple questions. Dennis asked, what is Passport to Advanced Math? It's just some advanced math type questions. It's just a certain category of math. When you actually go back and start learning about all the exam has to offer, you'll find out the different categories. So there's an algebra category, there's an advanced math category, which just takes it to a different level of math. So when you go back over your test, when you look over the questions, you can see the types of questions that are in that, and I'll show that to you in the online report. And Melissa asks, we never got this report. How do we get it? Well, you need to check in with your school. Your school should have it. Okay, so for you, if you never got the report, again, check in with your school. They should be handing them out. Either they're going to have a night of their own where they pass them out. The other is the College Board actually should have sent you an email, okay, and that I'll be able to access the scores online. If you don't have that, again, check in with your school, because the school gave the test, and they should have this report with them as well as your access code. So again, go check in with your advisor or your school counselor. And then I had someone ask, hey, I'm a freshman, when should I take the PSAT? Well, you should probably, if you haven't done it this year, you should take it as a sophomore if it's offered at your school. It's great practice. So I wouldn't worry about it right now. You can listen in and kind of understand what it's all about, okay? So very good questions, fantastic. And I'm gonna move on then. All right, great. Answered my 3 questions. So I'm going to now share my screen again, but I'm going to show you logging in online now, and we're going to look at the online report. So again, if you have your printed report and your access code, or if you got the email from College Board, you'll be able to log in and access that. All right, so back to my desktop. I'm going to stop. I'm actually going to get out. All right, we're going to go into the wonderful world of the internet and share my screen here. Okay. All right. So if you want to log in with me, if you have your access code and everything, please do. Feel free to do that. But if you don't, and you don't have your scores, for some of you, you can just kind of follow along. All right. So you go again online, and you should be able to go to College Board again and be able to access your score. So here's a student's score. This is their SAT score. So I'm going to go back and get their PSAT score. One of my students here. So when we log in here, here's the dashboard. Okay, so this is what a dashboard looks like of your PSAT score. Okay, again, now for the printed report, it looked a little bit different. It had the score in the middle. Okay, so you had this score, the 860 or whatever the number was on the print report, in the middle, and then you had your evidence-based reading on the left and the math on the right. Here it's just, you got your total score to the left. So don't get confused by that. So again, we go to studentscores.collegeboard.org. You punch in your access code or your password and information for your College Board account, and you'll pop this up and you'll get your score report for the PSAT. You can also download it here and print it up. It's a lot of fun to kind of explore on here. So again, your total score is here. They give you the range of what you would score if you took the real SAT. And then over here, the great thing about the online report is you can click a lot of these things like color key, and it's going to give you a description of what you're looking at. So if you don't understand something, you can click the I for information. It's going to tell you what this is about. So there's just a lot of things you can click on and learn about. On the printed report, the benchmarks were horizontal, and these are vertical, but it's the same idea. They're telling you if you're in the green, you're in the benchmark, you're exceeded. If you're in the red, you need to improve. And they even color code it down here. The other thing that you can do, and it'll say that on your printed report, is you can link to your scores to Khan Academy. Okay, if you don't know what Khan Academy is, and I'll talk a little bit about it later, is they have free practice for you. So Khan Academy will actually link up to your PSAT scores and give you more direct input as well as practice based on where your score is at the moment. So I highly suggest you do it. I'll show you, and I'll pull into it in a couple minutes. So if you clicked Khan Academy, it'll take you to a new page to actually link to SAT practice, and it's free. So for those of you who want to start doing prep, especially my juniors, this is a great way to get started. Okay, for my sophomores, you're probably not ready yet to start, and I'll talk a little bit about timeline in a minute. Okay. All right. So again, total score, your side scores here, you can look at your benchmarks, you have your percentile scores. So again, if this student scored a 41st percentile with their 860, the student, they're saying, and if you go, oh, well, what does that mean? Oh, look, it's just a representative sample that you're actually better than 41% of the students nationally. Okay, so 41%. Again, percentiles aren't that important to me. It's really what your score is starting at, what I call a baseline score, and where do you want to go with it? Because that'll change. Your percentiles will change if you do actually some work on it. So again, so this is your score page, your first score page. And then if we scroll down to the bottom is all those test scores that we already looked at on the printed report. So you have your reading score. And again, they give you a nice benchmark color grid. So this student is in the yellow, so they actually are approaching benchmark. And they have your writing language and your math score. Then you have your cross-test scores, and then your sub-scores. And again, you can look at how it is visually pleasing to show you what your score is and where it is along the line. As I mentioned, the most important scores are these test scores, these three, and your total score, okay? The other cool things that are on the online report is, for example, it links to Road Trip Nation. So if you were to click Roadmap to Careers, there's a lot of things you can do and explore. I'm just pointing it out as just another tool that you have available to you, that you can actually answer some questions and figure out some of your interests and how that ties into maybe your college search and what kind of majors you would want to do. So again, spend some time on it, especially my juniors and even my sophomores, to figure out, well, what might be I interested in for college? I don't know yet. Maybe I'll find out, and you can start exploring. So it's a really great opportunity for you to take that time. And again, it's free as part of your program within your PSAT test score. So again, there's all these things. Also, when you're ready to register for the SAT, you can do that. If you want to search for colleges, a whole bunch of tools that you can access on your online report. Obviously, you can on your printed report. So that's the report details. That's the left hash mark over here. The second part I want to point out is the skills insight. We talked a little bit about it. As I mentioned on your printed report, it talked to you about what you're able to do currently based on your score and what some suggestions they have for improving or working on your weaknesses. So again, you'll have some questions here. So this is in the reading section. This is, if you click here, you got the writing and language, and then the math. So these are your strengths and weaknesses, I like to say, when they call it skills insight. So according to them, they say it helps you get a better understanding on how your scores relate to specific skills, okay? And again, you'll always see Khan Academy. If you want to click on it, you can practice it, and they'll help you with that, okay? All right. So that's your skills insight. Not the most helpful part, and I'm going to save the best for last. Then here's your National Merit Selection Index. Again, you had it on your printed report. Here they have it in the last tab. This student scored a 130, not even close to getting national merit. And again, not that important. That's not the most important part of this, okay? And it just kind of gives you some information on it, how they find it. But the most important part of this whole thing, and the valuable tool that most students don't use, again, it's the most underutilized tool out there in test prep, because most students take the test, the PSAT their junior year, are the test questions area. So if you click on this part, this opens a whole new world for students, because you can actually see the questions you got right, the questions you got wrong. So for example, in the reading, here we are. It tells you how many total questions. So in reading, there's 47 total. How many you got right? 22. How many you got wrong? 25. And how many you left blank? By the way, you don't lose any points on the PSAT or the ACT or the SAT, so you should never leave a question blank. So if you did, that's one of your first strategic mistakes on the PSAT or the SAT, by leaving a question blank. You should always guess, even if you don't know the answer. Then there's a little key. Again, easy, medium, or difficult, which was on your printed report, and then correct as a check mark if you omitted something. And here's where the value is, Okay, and the value is the ability to go back to the different questions that you got right or wrong and see some trends, what you're missing, what you got right, what you got wrong. So for example, here's the question number, and you can actually click on it to go to the actual test question. So in a way, you actually have your test booklet here online. Here's all the correct answers and your answers and the difficulty level. So for me, one of the things I like to do and have my students do is to kind of sort the questions by what ones did I get incorrect. I can look at all my incorrect questions. Then I can sort it by how many easy questions did I get wrong, or how many medium, like look at all the medium questions that I got wrong. And it also tells you the subscore or the category. And then I can actually look it up. So let me do, I like always going to the math section. Let's go to the math without calculator. This student here only got 2 right. So let's look up some of the medium questions. So in the math section, question number 1, if I click on it, it's going to take me, and this is an algebra question. It was a medium question. He put A, and the correct answer was C. So here's the question. So you can look up the question, and then if you want to click on View, Answer, and Explanation, it's going to tell you, and it give you a little insight into why that answer is what it is, or why there's some wrong answers. So the value in this online report is not only does it give you the correct answer, but it explains it a little bit, okay? So for my juniors especially, I would go back to this report and look up what you got wrong and find out what the explanations are. Did you make a careless error? Did you not know how to do it? Did you just didn't have enough time? Find out some of those reasons. That'll give you some insight into what you need to do for the next time. Okay, so again, that's under the area under test questions in all the different areas. So again, for math with calculator, did a little bit better, 12 right, 19 wrong still. Okay, well, let's sort it by the questions they got wrong. Look at all the hard ones they're getting wrong. And there's some of these grid-in questions, remember, that aren't multiple choice where you fill in an answer. One's in harder algebra. For that student who has passport to advanced math, here it is. Let's look at the question. So for you who asked that question, what is passport to advanced math? Go look up the question. You'll get a sense of what kinds of questions are in that category. Okay, they'll break them down to algebra, problem solving, advanced math. So you'll be able to see that. So here's this student, okay? They're talking about prism, height, area, base. We're talking about volume. So volume is an advanced math type of category, and they want to know if you know how to do that. And this one also has quadratic equations, so that's a little bit more advanced math. So you can look up these questions and find out what those categories are all about. So that'll be helpful for you as well. Okay, so again, you can spend hours on this, everybody, okay? 1, do you want to? Not everybody does. And 2, do you have that time? But again, if you're a junior now and you haven't done anything and you're not happy with your score, or you don't know, I would really spend the time going back and doing what I'm doing right here. Is I'm filtering questions, what I'm getting wrong, why am I getting wrong, what category are they in, what are the answers and explanations. Again, this is so underutilized, and it's part of the program. You have access to it, so take advantage of it. Okay, what you don't want to do is go in unprepared for the next time, especially if you're unhappy. And the way to kind of get a little bit more prepared is to start doing problems and looking it up, and then linking it to Khan Academy. And then hopefully, for example, if advanced math is really poor, they'll give you some advanced math practice through Khan Academy. Okay. So again, so this is the way to filter questions, the way to find out the correct answers, get some explanations, and just kind of get some trends. You'll find some students will find that they do really bad on the hard questions, and then they're still making some errors on easy or medium questions. And sometimes it's because their approach is to finish every question or rush to do it. And sometimes that's not a great approach. I'm not going to talk too much test prep now, and that'll be in a future session that we do. But that gives you some insight. Is what are your trends? Where are you making mistakes? Do you get a lot of wrong answers in a row? Were you getting tired to the end of the test, and so you made some careless errors? What are those trends? And you got to figure that out by going back to the test. A couple other tools that they have something called AP Potential. If you click up here, you're able to kind of look and see if you have classes at your school that match a major, so if you put a major in College Board of something you're interested in, and your school has that course, and on this exam you did well in certain types of questions, it'll tell you that maybe you have some AP potential. But I always tell students that this report won't tell you. Your school advisors and your school and the classes they have and your grades will tell you better than this report. But again, it's just another tool. And then we talked about the Road Trip Nation, but they also have a college search here, an action plan, a few other tools here that are really good. I like their college search, Big Future. We also, within the CUSD district, you also have access to Naviance, which has a great college search as well, and Supermatch. So there's some really cool tools you can start using. I highly recommend that you use some of those tools. Okay. I have a question here. Somebody asked, I have some unscorable questions. How can I avoid this? Well, you can avoid this by, one, either not taking the test, no, I'm kidding, is by bubbling in properly and not making so many erasures when you're taking the test. So some students, what they'll do, how you can avoid it, is answer in the booklet and then take them in groups and score them and make sure you know what answers, as opposed to you have an answer, you pick it and you score it and you bubble it in, but you weren't done with that question, okay? And that happens sometimes. So what you could do is bubble in lighter, so when if you need to erase it, you could do that. But I usually tell students to go through the test, mark it in their booklet, and later on in groups of answer choices, then go through the booklet and put it in your bubble sheet. So that happens sometimes, but it's unfortunate for you. I would go back to those questions and see, would I have gotten those right or would I have gotten those wrong? And you'll learn for next time, okay? But great question. All right, so moving on. So that was the online report, okay? And what I want to do, again, I want to put a lot of this in perspective. I want to talk a little bit about linking it to Khan Academy, what your next steps should be. So I'm going to open it up to a couple more things and show you my PowerPoint again, and we'll do that. So again, any more questions, have them come in. Please keep doing them if you have some questions. I'm going to get to the Khan Academy stuff, as well as we did the online report, but kind of putting it all in perspective. So again, you can learn a lot from your answers, what you got, identifying wrong questions. We kind of went through that. AP potential. Okay, so again, for Khan Academy, it is free. So again, if you go to satpractice.org, I showed you online again, but this is how you link to Khan Academy and your PSAT scores. And it's going to give you a personalized prep plan based on how you did on the PSAT. So I encourage that, especially those that are juniors now and are looking to do some prep, okay? Again, part of it is you're going to have to actually create a separate account in Khan Academy, and then they'll have a spot where they prompt you to link to your College Board account, and all you have to do is hit send, and it's going to link it, and then it'll have that practice for you. So that's all you have to do, okay? All right, so next steps. What should you guys be thinking about? What should you be doing now, okay? This is the most important part, because if you got your score and you weren't happy with it and you do nothing, you're still going to be unhappy in it moving forward. So again, check your PSAT scores online for more tools. I showed them to you. I would suggest, especially for my sophomores now, juniors, it's a little late, but taking a practice ACT is not a bad idea as well, because maybe that's a better test for you. Maybe if you weren't happy with your score, maybe to try a practice ACT. I'm not telling you to go take the real one, because then it goes on your record. You can take a practice ACT. You can meet with our Futureology. Again, I'm from Futureology with CUSD, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but you can schedule an appointment with my counselors and myself, and we can talk about ACT practice testing and which one you're better suited for if you take a practice ACT, okay? Continue to take challenging courses in high school. Link your scores to Khan Academy. We talked about that. Making a practice prep plan, but that works best when you know if you're better suited for the SAT or ACT, because some students try to do both of them and it gets too much, especially when they're juniors. It's better to pick a path and go down the path. If you're a sophomore, you have more time. Figure that out by the summer, which is really great. Then you got to register for the test. And then again, our Capistrano Unified has free resources for college and career counseling, especially really convenient. We do it at night. You can meet with one of our counselors to make some of these plans, to decide what you want to do, and we're going to help you with that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So what's the perspective of all this? And really, for some students, they ask me, well, Anthony, what's a good score on the PSAT? Or what's a good score on the SAT or even the ACT? And I always tell students, it's a score that gets you in. I got a couple more questions. How much practicing and preparing should I be doing as a sophomore? Okay, great question. I'll answer that quickly now in a nutshell. Is you shouldn't be doing anything as a sophomore right now. You should be getting good grades right now. Juniors, if you haven't done anything yet, you need to be doing it now. But my sophomores is finish the year strong with your grades. You should be doing some stuff over the summer. But before the summer hits, my sophomores should be trying a practice ACT and comparing it with their PSAT and seeing which test they're better at. And then in the summer, you make a prep plan. But the prep plan, and I'll talk about it in this second when we talk about where your scores will take you, will be determined based on where you want to go to school. So if you're close to your goal or you're far from your goal, will determine what your prep plan should be. And that's why you maybe want to schedule an appointment with my counselors, and I will be able to help you figure that out. Okay. Somebody missed their minutes of the webinar. You log in to see your scores by getting your password from your printed report, or you got an email from College Board. So I would check with the schools to find out and get your report. So you need to go to your school advisor, get the score report if you haven't received a College Board email. But if you have a College Board password and account already, you should be able to log in and get your test scores. So that's really on you, or get it from the school. All right, back to this this big page of all these schools and scores. I got a couple pages of these schools and these scores. So look at all these schools. So what's a good score? And I said, it's the score that gets you in. Well, the score that gets you in depends on where you're applying to. So for example, let's say you got 1,000. Okay, so you have 1,000 on your score. I'll type it in here. So I got 1,000. Boop, there I am. All right, I have my score. I just put it in the middle page. And let's just say, I'm interested in going to Columbia University. Well, if I go to Columbia over here and it says the average is 1525, I'm very far from my goal. Okay, so this will tell you if it's a good score or not for that particular school. Okay, but if you're going to Flagler College, 1130, you're very close to that goal. So it really depends on the schools that you're looking at. Okay, so this is really important because a lot of students make a big mistake. Is they go, well, I want to go to Stanford, which, by the way, has 5% acceptance rate. There's 1,500 is in the score. Oh, here I am. I'm at 1,000. Well, it's going to be a very rich school. Doesn't mean you'll never get to a 1,500, but at 1,000, it's going to require you, for example, all summer long, 20 hours a week, and you may never even get there. Okay, so it's also, you got to be realistic. So this will help you determine what your prep plan should be. So it's really important you know what your baseline is, and now you have it. You have your PSAT scores and where you want to go. So for those of you who don't know where you want to go, starting that college search now will help you determine what you need to do to kind of get in that range. Dennis, I don't know your question. How do I get to this page? What page? I'm not sure what page you want. If it's the page to your online report, it'll be on your printed report. Okay. If you go to College Board, and you can find your PSAT scores there. The page you're looking at right here is just a page I put together, a slide I put together. Oh, the page you're looking at, Dennis, you don't get to it. That's just something I made for the workshop tonight. The way you get to a page similar to this is you do a college search, and I'll show you two of those websites. One is going to Big Future on College Board, which is one of the tools if you access your PSAT, or from CUSD, if you guys have a Naviance account, you can find information like this through your Supermatch, doing a college search, and you can get this type of data, for example, test scores. So again, What's your PSAT score? Match it against a school, and that'll help you determine kind of a prep plan. If you're far from your goal, you'll need some formal prep and a lot of work, and that's a whole nother session talking about prep, but I'm not going to do that tonight. Or you could, again, meet with my counselors, and it's part of the district program that's free to do that. If you're with the PATS, again, it's a whole different setup, and you guys should have received your link to kind of set up some college counseling for that. So again, this helps put it in perspective. Now, for a lot of students, they might be too far from their goal. So either you got to change your expectations, um, or what I usually suggest in my counseling is finding a good match school. It's okay to have those reach schools, but have some schools where you have the numbers and you're in the range or you're close to that range. Okay, and that's part of making that prep plan, and that's part of making a good college list. Okay. All right. So again, here's a lot of different schools and some numbers. And so let's just say you scored a 1200. Well, James Madison, you're right in the range. Perfect. Hollins, you're above the range. LSU, you're above the range. Marist, you're close. But MIT or Pomona or Princeton, you're far from that goal and you're going to need a lot of work. So that's going to help determine your prep plan. So is it a good score? Well, it depends. And I wouldn't compare my school scores to somebody else. It would be compare them to yourself and where you want to go. Okay. And then adjust accordingly. Okay. All right. The other great thing about understanding scores and getting good scores is there's a lot of aid to go around with good test scores or even good grades that some people don't even realize. So sometimes I go, well, I'm happy with my score, but hey, if you actually do a little bit more work and oh shoot, if I get another 100 points, I can get a scholarship, or I can be in the range for a scholarship at TCU and get a $16,000 scholarship. Well, great. Well, then go for it. So you should also think about that stuff. Even if you're happy with your score, you might go, well, shoot, if I get a little bit more, I can get some more aid. And that might be good. So if I go to UNC Charlotte and I have a 1200, well, a little prep and doing some work, and if I get a 1300, boy, I can get to $16,000 to $17,000 worth of aid. So again, your test scores can also help you with scholarships, and that's part of the research process. So you guys should take a look at that as well. Another person asked, should I take courses or classes to help me improve my score? Great question, and it's a loaded question, as I like to say, is should you? It depends if you are not happy with your scores. So again, this is kind of why I'm making this comment here. And I talked about these type of things such as, oh, well, if I have a score that's 200 points below where I want to go at Pomona, well then, heck yeah, you should do some types of courses. That's a whole nother conversation. And again, I won't go at it blindly. I would probably make an appointment with one of my counselors to kind of talk about that and what you should be looking for. But based on how many points of improvement you need, you might need different types of programs. Some people like, oh, I need a program that teaches me a lot of strategy. I need some that has lots of practice tests and evaluation and stuff. So there's a lot that goes into picking the right one for you. But it's all based on, again, a good college search and knowing what kind of scores you need to be in that range. Okay. So again, lots of things to consider. It's not an easy decision, but if you, again, take a little bit at a time and figuring out, you talk to someone, and like my counselors who are trying to help all my students in CUSD, you'll get closer to where you need to be and make a plan that fits you best. Okay. Really good question. All right. So moving on. When should you take the test, which comes up pretty often. So I'm going to give you a really quick rundown of something like that. So my juniors who, if you haven't tested yet, you're behind the eight ball a little bit. So it's really important that we try to get one of your tests on record by the end of junior year. So you should take it in March if you've got time to get ready for it. If you're close to your score, then great, take it in March. If you need more prep time, maybe May or June of this year. So my juniors, now is the time. So you should go back to your PSAT, find out what you need. Oh, I skipped past it. My sophomores, again, I would suggest figuring out if you're better suited for the SAT or ACT by the summer. Prep over the summer, whatever you need, whether you're close to your score, whether you need a lot of prep, and taking it in the fall. Okay, but before you start really the hectic junior year. If you can get that out of the way early on and focus on your grades junior year, which are the most important year for your grades, you'll be in good shape. Okay, and you can take the test more than once, but a lot of people take it more than once, 2, 3, 4 times. I don't recommend anything more than 3. Is a lot of times because they don't prep properly. Okay, because they don't think about where my goal is. They go in and they go, well, shoot, I got 1,000 on the PSAT, then I go take the ACT, you get 1,000 again, and you weren't happy with 1,000. Well, you need to get ready and prep for that. So take it only more than once. If you won, you prep properly, and if the second time you're going to do something about it if you didn't get the score you wanted the first time. Okay, so in terms of when you should take it, that's a general timeline. In terms of registering for the SAT, again, on College Board, you can do that, or when you log into your PSAT, it shows you where to register. Okay, so my juniors, you should be registering now for it so you can get your location and your center. And then somebody asked me some of those websites, the scores I was looking at. Again, in Naviance or Big Future, this is a College Board site, and Naviance, for those who have access in CUSD, you should have that, be able to log into it and get the link from your school website. Okay, and you should have a password for that. So those are great resources to help put your score in perspective and decide what kind of prep or what you need to do based on the school you want to go to. And I love these 2 sites especially because you can figure out, oh, well, I'm interested in a school that has this type of major, whether it be engineering or business. I'm also interested in having to be in an urban setting, or I like to have a big school, more than 15,000 students. It'll help narrow it down for you. So that's why that's a great resource. Okay. All right, we're almost coming to an hour, and I wanted to kind of stay within the hour, so I'm right on track. So if you have some more questions as I wrap up, please kind of throw them out there. Again, I mentioned I'm from Futureology, which is part of Capistrano Unified School District, and we do college and career counseling for students in the district at no charge. And we're conveniently located at the Shops of Mission Viejo, and we're available Monday through Friday from 1:30 to 9. So my counselors and I, we try to be accessible for students to talk about some of these things. So again, we do best fit college search and selection. And for my PATS players that are here, that are part of the soccer club, we also have a program for you to schedule appointments as well. And I'll mention that in a little bit. But we do best fit college search and selection, where we help you with Naviance. We talk about if you're a student athlete, exploring schools. We also help you with applications and strategy. So for my seniors who are applying in the fall to Cal State or a UC, we help you work on those. We also have career exploration and financial aid and scholarship support. So again, all you need to do is go to this website, CUSD-Futureology.org, and appointments and events, and you can actually schedule an appointment. So I'm going to show you really quickly. If we go to that, I'm going to head over to this right here. So if you go to CUSD-Futureology.org, here we are, and appointments and events, and you click schedule a one-on-one appointment, you'll be able to schedule an appointment with one of my counselors here and talk about things like this. All right, here we go. Oh, we're filling up pretty quickly, and you go schedule an appointment. Okay. So I highly suggest you do that if you want to talk about your test prep plan, if you want to talk about college search, and a lot of the categories that I mentioned. Okay. And far as the other appointments, I got a couple more questions. Where can I access the list of schools you were showing with the average scores? Somebody mentioned that. Go to Naviance or College Board, the Big Future websites. So bigfuture.collegeboard.org. Or if you have a Naviance account, your school should have information and access to Naviance. So again, that was a slide that I made, but you can get that type of information on a couple of those sites like that. Somebody asked, do college require you to send in both SAT and ACT scores? No, you just take one or the other. That's why I recommend choosing one path and going down that path, but really good question. All right, so kind of back to my last few slides. All right. And then here's a grade level checklist for all our students here. If you go to this site again, and under college and readiness checklist, we have a little checklist of year by year, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, of information that you can get that tells you what to do and when. So it kind of keeps you on track, okay? So I really highly suggest you go there. All right, and then, so here's an example of it. So if you're 12th grade, it just tells you a timeline of what to do and when to do it, and little bullet points, and when you do visits in October, maybe take this test. And so it's a really great way for you to keep on track. So print it up as a sophomore if you're a sophomore, print it up as a junior if you're a junior, and follow along. Make sure you're keeping up to date on that stuff, okay? For my Pats, my soccer players, all you have to do is go to this site. You should have gotten that link from the Pats, and you can sign up for a counseling session as well, okay? And so with that, that kind of ends the presentation. I'm going to take some questions and kind of the last 10 minutes, kind of do that again. So somebody wants to know the appointment page again, so I'll do that for you. So if we go to the website here it is, CUSD-Futureology, and you click on appointments and events, and it click on schedule a one-on-one. And you can click a one-on-one, okay? And then pick your date and time, okay? Somebody asked if when taking the SAT, should we list schools to send results to or wait until retest to see the only higher score? Great question, Laura. Again, another loaded question. It depends. If you're not sure of your school list yet, I would hold off, even though it might cost you more in the end, because I'd rather you have your college list set and know what schools you should send it to. But I don't think it's a huge deal. And again, too, if you're going to retest, so this takes some planning. So if you're not planning properly, then a lot of students, they do send the schools to the schools initially. So I would say figure that out beforehand and make sure you plan properly, and that will give you your answer. You'll probably have all that information, okay? Someone else, how can I get more school activity and after school activity hours, and how do I know how many hours of school I want, is asking for. Great question, but this is unfortunately not the time or place. It's again, another bigger question. If you're within CUSD, I suggest making an appointment or coming to one of our workshops on that type of topic. But since we're focusing on more of the testing right now and the PSAT, I want to focus on that because there's just a lot more that goes with school activity and searching that and finding your interests. So great question, but I think I'm going to table that some other time, okay? But again, schedule an appointment and talk to my counselors, and that'd be great. All right. And then for those in the PATS, here's the website to come to schedule an appointment with me. If you go to calendly.rusomano PATS counseling session, you'll be able to do that, but you should have got that link as well. Okay. All right, other question, last few questions. If you got all your questions answered, happy to say goodbye to you. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you got some good information. You got a better understanding of the scores. There's a lot to it, sure. But if you plan properly, you start thinking about these things over time, you'll be able to make a good plan. When is there a webinar for SAT and ACT strategies? Not set yet, so I would hold off on that. But I know who you are asking this question, and I know you've talked to some of my counselors. So I think there's bigger questions for you. I would continue to talk to them and make a plan for that, because I think you're past some of that. And just having one webinar, I don't know if that's the answer. So for those of you who are thinking about, well, shoot, I need a webinar on taking the test now. Great. But that's not the answer to test prep. So if you're far from your goal, you need more than one webinar. You need a program of some sort that meets your needs. So I would suggest, again, doing the research necessary. But I have nothing scheduled for an SAT and ACT strategy webinar yet, unless you're with the PATS. So that'll be coming. All right. Any final questions before we wrap up? And that kind of kept us at an hour, so it was good timing. And again, great questions. Thank you, everybody, for all the questions. If you want to reach out to me, I'm going to, again, mention my email again if you have a specific question. If you just want to schedule an appointment, head out to CUSD-Futureology.org. For me, my email is ajrusomano Oh, somebody asked, what is the PAST? It's a soccer group that let us borrow their platform tonight, and I really appreciate it. Is this presentation available online later? I'm going to record it. It might be available later. But there is some stuff available through your school, and there might be some stuff at your school. If you email me, I will make sure it gets into the right hands. So here comes my email. I'm going to type it in the chat again if you have any questions and follow up. Anybody else? I'm going to stop the recording. And again, thank you, everybody. Hope you got something